Today's video is sponsored by KEH Camera. Yo, what is up guys? Welcome back to another video. For today's video, we're going to be reviewing the Leica M10 digital camera. Before we get things going, I know what you're thinking. Wow, Corey, what an impressive beard you have going on there. It actually has only taken me like 7 to 10 days to grow this masterpiece. So yeah, I'm definitely looking for a razor sponsor. I know somebody who watches this knows somebody that works at Harry's or Dollar Shave Club. So if you want to protect my audience from ever seeing this facial hair again, then please, we are definitely looking for a razor sponsor for the channel. With that being said, I did recently take the Leica M10 camera with a 28mm Elmarit lens out to West Texas and have shot it a little bit around my house and in East Tennessee as well. You guys know the deal. We do a little bit of specs around here. We do a little bit of practicality, but I will tell you if I think this camera is a dumpster fire or if it is somehow by an act of God worth the $5,000 to $6,000 that you will pay for the body alone. Let's get it popping. First off, specs. First thing I wrote down for specs, and the only thing I wrote down for specs, was that this camera boasts 24 megapixels, a 24 megapixel sensor, which, yeah, you don't have to know a lot about digital cameras to know that, you know, there's a lot of cameras that have a lot more pixels these days, but I didn't really notice anything. I thought all my images were plenty sharp, and so I did want to put that down about specs. This is the original Leica M10 as well. I know that I believe the R or whatever the newer M10 version is, you know, has a little bit better of a sensor, but I didn't see any problem with it, and 24 MPs was good enough for this fella. One little caveat that I want to also speak on, brothers and sisters, very quickly, is that I was shooting on the 28 Elmarit lens. KEH, when they loaned me this camera to make this video for you guys, asked what kind of lens I wanted to borrow, and I said, well, dadgum, somebody send me that 28mm Elmarit, because I got a lot of friends who use it, and this was a terrible choice. So most of my early days was just simply getting used to the 28mm focal length. So a lot of my frustrations with this camera actually came down to my lens choice as opposed to the camera itself. So just wanted to throw that little note in there that these photos are quite wide because I was shooting on a quite wide lens, which I regretted immediately. Next, when it comes to Leica, we have to talk about the design or the ergonomics of the camera. I don't personally believe that you should spend a giant wad of cash on a camera just because it looks nice, but I do always like to let everybody know that obviously it matters. I think if you're a camera person or a creative person, I think you probably care about the way that things look. And when it comes to Leica, it is undeniable that while it may not be worth the loads of extra money that would be required to purchase a Leica M10, they do look fantastic. They look beautiful, and the M10 is no exception. I mean, this thing is smoking. Very minimal. You have the shutter speed wheel, you have the ISO dial, which at first I thought was kind of silly, but I ended up loving it. You just pull this up and then switch it, and then you have a very minimal menu here on the back. So yeah, when it comes to the design, I've said this many times on the channel, when it comes to Leica M bodies, obviously we're always weighing that price, but the design is top tier. It is quite frankly a work of art. I did want to hit on the size of the camera as well when talking about the design or the physical nature of the Leica M10. Yeah, camera was very small, much smaller than I'm used to for a digital rig. For my digital work, or, you know, paid photography or commercial work, or how I pay the bills with the camera usually is actually not done on a film camera, but is done on a digital setup. I personally have used for quite some time and still use the Canon 5D series. There's a lot of better systems or setups these days, but it just feels like home to me. And so I did want to show you the comparison of how much smaller the Leica M10 was than my Canon 5D Mark IV setup with a 24-70 lens. Some people would give y'all like some B-roll, but you get the picture. This Leica M10 is really small. Next on my list, I have batteries. So I'll be the first to say I've only used this camera for a few weeks, and I definitely didn't put the Leica M10 batteries through the ringer or through some rigorous tests, like maybe shooting an all day long job on a shoot or shooting a wedding, but I did use it pretty comfortably for an entire weekend where I was shooting quite consistently, just hanging around with friends and hiking and all of that jazz. From what I read on the internet, a lot of people are skeptical of the Leica M10 batteries, and rightfully so. Just the nature of the camera being small on the battery batteries. I don't know, just something about them. But mine lasted just fine for personal work and hanging out with friends. So leave a comment down below if you've ever run into trouble with the Leica M10 batteries for maybe some bigger projects or more professional things, such as shooting a wedding all day or being on set all day. But for just shooting casually, shooting the breeze, the batteries were great, no complaints on that end at all. Next on my list was high ISO performance. I think that's something that digital people care a lot about. And I mean, I'm a digital person, I shoot digital. It's something that is important to me, but I shoot a Canon 5D, which is not known for spectacular low light capabilities. So if I did care more, I probably would have switched over to like a Sony system or something that's a little bit better by now. But I did test it out handheld. I shot a few images at 3200 ISO, 1600, and so on. So these photos will be on the screen now. Some Blue Hour stuff, and I thought it was great. I'm not the person to ask for anything of this nature. It's just not really my wave, but the photos can speak for themselves, and I can tell you that all these photos were shot at either 1600 or 3200. So you be the judge of if you think it was able to handle that properly. One of the last things to address about the Leica M10, I think, is besides the price tag of the Leica M10 would be the fact that it's a digital rangefinder. Now that is just wonky, dog. I remember when I received this camera, I knew because I had read and I had talked to some of my mates, my proper mates, bruv, that this was a rangefinder camera, which for a digital system is quite odd, or at least it was odd to me. Really quickly, the difference between a rangefinder and an SLR camera, which is a little bit more traditional, is that a rangefinder has a little patch in the middle that you have to line up, and you can also see everything in the viewfinder completely in focus, as opposed to an SLR. When you look, you might see, you know, a cup on a table is in focus, but then the background is out of focus, which is depth of field, and that's how most traditional cameras work. However, after using a rangefinder system for quite some time on my Mamiya 7 and having also previously owned a Leica M6 and an MP, I'm pretty comfortable with the rangefinder, and I don't know if I prefer it to an SLR. I definitely am more comfortable with it. So going into the Leica M10, I thought I was going to be quite ready for a rangefinder digital experience. However, I was completely wrong, and I wanted to launch this camera deep into the desert after taking just like 20 photos with it because I didn't have autofocus for a digital camera. And I'm not gonna lie, I thought that was very stupid. I did get used to having no autofocus and having to constantly line up the patch for little moments here and there, but at the end of it all, I would say that was definitely the biggest flaw for me. I could personally never own a digital rig that was my primary rig for shooting professional work, such as a photo shoot or an engagement session or a family portrait session or weddings or shooting for a brand, any of that stuff. I could personally never do that without a camera or digital camera that has autofocus. So if it was me going towards the Leica systems and it was more for my everyday digital rig to pay my bills and keep these lights on, then it would have to be the SL2 for me. Unfortunately, the SL2 also costs more than like 3 small cars put together. So that leads us to the price of the M10, which I have pulled up here. Yeah, it's just, even for a used one, for the body alone is going to be over 5,000 US dollars. Whoa, that's a lot of money, a lot of cheddar, a lot of guap, a lot of beans. So yeah, the Leica M10, it rules. It's super sick, it's super fun. The only way I could ever see myself owning it is probably if I was a very, very, very wealthy man that was able to have a digital camera that was solely meant for fun or travel, because it was a very enjoyable camera, much more enjoyable in a lot of ways to carry around than a Canon 5D Mark IV. One example being is I don't think I would ever take my Canon 5D Mark IV into a coffee shop if me and Kelly or some pals were going in there, because it's like a brick and it doesn't look pretty and it's just not very functional. But I could see myself taking a Leica M10 into a coffee shop, but then I'm gonna have to pay $7,500 for the lens and the body, and I could just do so much more with that. I could buy so much more camera gear, and so, well, depending on the lens, obviously I could get a cheaper lens, but you guys get it. It's just a little bit too expensive for me if it's not gonna be my main digital camera to make work with that pays my bills. Yo, before we wrap up this video, guys, I wanna take a few quick seconds to let you guys know a little bit more about KEH Camera. Now, while the Leica M10 may not have been the camera for me in this particular season of my photographic journey, mostly because I can't afford it, I can say my copy was mad clean and it looked so good, and that was probably the hardest part about realizing that it's just not for me right now. Want to know why it looks so good? Because it came from KEH. KEH is, and I truly mean it when I say this because I've used their service long before they were a sponsor of the channel, is the best place for all of your camera or photographic needs. On KEH.com, you can shop, sell, trade, repair, basically anything that you would ever need to get done with your cameras. KEH is the place to go. This month, I definitely want to highlight the sell feature of KEH's platform and company. I don't want to speak for you guys, but I think I know enough photographers to know that we all have that one camera body, that one lens laying around collecting dust on a bookshelf or under your bed, and we think we're going to use it again, but the reality is you're probably never actually going to pick it up again. This is where KEH's sell program comes in, because you can literally pick it up, ship it to KEH, and they will give you real life money, trading credit to purchase other things that you'll actually be able to use or things that you want to use to continue in your photographic journey. So if you guys like me, or you like the video, or you just want to do something kind today, please be sure to hit the links down below, go over to KEH's website, show them some love, and be sure to always keep them in mind whenever you're considering purchasing your next photographic equipment, film, whatever it may be.